1 minute.
All right, I'm going to mute my mic.
You're watching HCAM TV.
Hello, this is Friday Night Wake Up Call, and I'm Cheryl Peralt. This is a program that has been taking place since the start of quarantine, and it involves inviting guests on Friday night who are artists to share their poetry or their writing or their songs, talk a little about their creative process and these times of dealing in the world. And I've been shouting out birthdays as host. And tonight happens to be my daughter's. So I say happy birthday, Abby, this week. And I also want to shout out to my father because he's been a viewer, and he was rushed to the hospital yesterday. He's been enjoying these shows and he had a heart problem, a rapid heartbeat, and he's still there today, but he's doing okay. And he noted he's very, very grateful to be alive. And I am grateful for that. And I noticed with this happening yesterday with my father, the grief that I was feeling in advance for him and the potential that I might lose him in the worry of that, and feeling a reverence for life come, and being aware that when we're in this kind of situation, we do get an acceleration of thinking about the reverence for life. And what we can realize then is it is for the world of us, the importance of reverence of life, as well as the world of all of us. It's the same thing. And that comes alive when we're dealing with something like this. And so I'm glad for my father. But I realized that we are learning and addressing this in this new year of 2020 with the COVID-19 and more recent attention to facing what we're addressing, the long history and contemporary realities of racial oppression, injustice, and violence. My sister, in wanting to attend to my father, said she was going right to see him in another state. And I noticed how when we're in family, we sometimes get urges like that. And my feeling was that we're getting the idea we need to feel this kind of knee-jerk reaction for our larger family. And we're seeing some people start to do this. And our three features tonight show that this to us, and they help us see this through their art. And all three of these leaders are writers and thought leaders in the world who work in university settings and community settings of different kinds. And I see them as deeply caring for our world as a global family. And they write in powerful ways and get people to think and feel about what matters, what's important in this world. And so we'll be joined by Harlem 125, Jihang Padma, and Deborah Rocha. And tonight we will be starting with Harlem 125. And just to briefly tell you about him, here he is. Hello, Harlem 125. I think we'll just need you to take your unmute your mic, please. And just to let you know from a little bio about him that as a poet, Harlem 125 is well known nationally. He's a highly regarded figure in competitions, performance, concerts, and beyond. And he's also involved, well known in Boston for leading workshops with issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he gets called into high schools and colleges to bring calm and constructive unity after issues of racial injustice, and also does presentations in colleges on diversity and pluralism, and is known as the human highlight of poetry and edu-activism. Hello, Harlem 125. Thank you. That's a lot to say. That's a lot of work.
Put it out.
I really appreciate your being here.
You gave me such a great intro. Thank you, Cheryl. It's an honor to be here.
Yes. I had seen the quote by Issei Barnwell. We all have a voice, but most of us don't know how powerful our voices can be. And in seeing you in a variety of settings, share your poetry and speak, I believe you have such power of voice. And as I have also realized as a poet, and the stories that you share and have to educate us and help us understand, you have a gift that I have not seen with any as strongly in any other poet, I would say, of getting us to feel, FEEL, what you are talking about, the topics that you are getting us to hear stories of and feel the experience of inclusion and the importance of that, and to really feel the experience of the poetry you share. And when we were talking, I don't know, a month ago about your joining, it was addressing your grandmother at the time as related to COVID-19, that you had written a very powerful poem about her. And I know I was talking about the importance for us all to feel grief related to those we've lost in that area. Would you like to share that or start in some other direction?
No, it's fine. My grandmother is so important to me, and she lived an incredible life, and the thing that hurt the most was when it happened so fast, and it happened it felt disrespectful, but it was just what the time was and what it called for. So the poem kind of comes from that place of this pain and just trying to understand some things. But anyone who has a loved one that they've lost to COVID-19, I feel with you and send energy and healing energy to you. And anyone that's died, period, and you lost a loved one, we send that love and light to you. But my grandmother's name is Dorothy, and so the poem is called Dorothy. COVID-19 got our grandmother. They said no one could go and visit her. Couldn't sing through the windows because she can't stand no more. They said she too weak to hold the telephone. You ever been too weak to hold the telephone? And every time we call, it takes 30 minutes to hear her breathe. Because they have to find someone available to suit up and hold the phone for her. They say she just mumbles now, only able to say, I love you. It's happening so fast, faster than her son who abandoned me, faster than the person that blind dated her to COVID, faster than ventilators can arrive, faster than breath. COVID took grandma on Wednesday. With Nana till death, my cousin, now backwards, upside down, outside herself and incapable, in New York, Westchester County, New Rochelle, ground zero zone. They say you shouldn't come to this state, Jamil. That's where I'm from. Don't come, Jamil. They say we can't have a funeral. It's the rules, they say. Our last words between myself and my grandmother were, I love you. I'm I'm not done with them being done with her. How do you tell death it's wrong? Nothing makes you want to be closer to someone than the invisible keeping you apart. Someone explain God to me. Answer the question list. I don't know what to ask, but I feel like a question. The question mark of me is her exclamation point. Is this thing in heaven with her? Or does it stay with her body? Can her angel wings breathe, give breath of life? Does she have her voice back and syllable and strength to speak to me? Or does another angel have to hold my voice to her ear so that she can hear, I love you, Grandma?
Thank you. And that really, I'm so sorry for your loss and pain for your grandmother, Dorothy. And so that is a voice for, I would imagine, so many as well, going through what you have experienced. And that isn't really being articulated perhaps or heard yet, because there is so much going on as well. And we need to stay connected and to hear voices of grief and of honoring of people, all our people.
I agree. And people is such a important word, especially this point in time. It's all about people. Yeah. And when it comes to COVID-19, sometimes it feels like the people who report the stories and talk about it aren't talking about people. They're talking about numbers. The number of cases has gone up. The number of deaths has gone up. These are people. And every person is a universe unto themselves. And so we're losing planets. We're losing people. We're losing these people. So there are people connected to these things. The other piece with this is that we know that this virus is disproportionately impacting Black and brown folks and minoritized folks. And so when you make it numbers, there's a racism piece that plays into that further fuels just that pain and that suffering. And so it was so important for you to just use that word people, because it is so important that we recognize that there are people that we're losing. The other thing is that we don't oftentimes hear about the survivors. Fortunately, there are people that I know who have survived it. And when you see them, and when I see them, I always say thank you, appreciate seeing you, especially if there's someone of color as well, because I'm like, we don't hear that story. Mm-hmm. We don't hear that. We don't see too many people on the nightly news talking about that they've been through it, right, and that they've survived it. And I think that's equally as newsworthy, if not more so newsworthy, because it gives hope. It gives a different story, but one of strength, perseverance. So it's good to name that as well. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. And this is, as I am witness to you, part of your work in raising your voice through poetry, through public speaking, in colleges and churches and concert halls. And you are working on behalf, I think, in the big picture of people, again, your united vision of people, and you are focusing in on racial injustice and oppression. And I've seen you do this for a number of years now. And what you are addressing in your words, in your poetry, is it seems like it is finally getting attention. I don't know how that feels for you within this country, within white people audience in different ways and different parts of civilization currently. And, I was listening to your TED Talk, which is very powerful. And you talked a few years ago about the epidemic. If not an epidemic, it's not affecting you. If it's not an epidemic, it's not affecting you yet. And I thought, that's prophetic sounding now in a way. And it's kind of, you're showing the parallel of virus of racism that hasn't been seen in the same way at this time of the virus, as well as what has happened to George Floyd and all the subsequent events that are getting voice. And I don't know what your experience is as you've been raising your voice for a number of years in very powerful ways, and what your wish is, or if you wish to share some of that poetry now.
Sure. You're setting up the poems wonderfully.
Oh, good.
Hey there, black boy. Hey there, brown boy. Hey there, young child swinging from the tree. Instead of whips and chains, now they just shoot me. See you next time with bulletproof skin. They figured out a new way to kill us again. Hands up, don't shoot is what we say. I can't breathe, don't kill me that way. My spirit don't die. God loves me. Tell the pearls of the world and newborn babies. Ferguson, Missouri is an epidemic, not a situation. If it's not an epidemic to you, that means it's not affecting you yet. I bet if a group killed countless people group like you, it would be an epidemic to you. But hold up, stop and frisk this. Around the age when I was old enough to go outside and play by myself, my mother said, boy, when you get stopped by the police, if you get stopped by the police, because they do that sometimes, don't do anything that might get you killed or locked up. In fact, stay in this neighborhood, on this block, in front of this building, so that you're close to home, baby. And that's exactly where these boys are murdered, in their neighborhoods, on their blocks, in front of their buildings, and close to home. This is poverty of a soul living in a wealth of pain. How do you explain ripping the life out of an unarmed body? And I don't know what to say, so I begin to act like my name is Michael, Erica, Oscar, and I lived in Ferguson, Brooklyn, and Oakland, living like them black boys do, dying like them black boys do. And they say 2-5, please don't overreact, because black boys are under attack. And that's mostly said by those who are not black. And I feel like I'm under attack. See, it's hard being human when you started out as property. It's hard being human when you're the anomaly. It's hard being human when you're minoritized. Understand, it's hard being human when you learn that once, you'll consider just 3/5 of one. See us as heartbeats and not target sheets. And this ain't just about black boys or 200 kidnapped girls or condemning all the police in the world. This is about deconstructing systems of oppression, breaking away from the chains, unshackling our brains and seeing all humans as humane. Turn down for what? This gives us every reason to simply turn up. Let's sacrifice life, unlace our eyelashes, let them flutter to the floor. Catch as much as I can in my eyes so the dirt never gets in yours. Come on now. Is sacrifice that hard? Or is it uncomfortable? Is privilege a right? Or is it comfortable? Ferguson, Missouri's deconstruction of the myth that we live in a post-racial consensus. So we either work together or remain separate forever. Not a moment, but a movement. How much death does it take before we see life? They've been murdering black people since Jesus Christ, and the Lord said, Black lives matter. Everybody matters, not just white bodies matter. But when young white bodies get snatched, everything is used to catch those body snatchers, but not kidnappers of black and brown bodies. It's true. Check 1776, 1812, or 1492. When white bodies leap from rules, remember, black and brown bodies fight suicide too. Recognize that darker bodies get abused too, just like white bodies do, but it seems to not matter till it happens to a white body. But anybody that's hurt to have some body alert, a body they can assist in the matter. We all matter. When black and brown bodies get hurt, it should hurt white bodies too. Until those bodies are rescued, all I'm asking is if somebody could remind everybody that nobody is a nobody, and that black, brown, and white bodies are all beautiful human bodies. Praises due to the black woman. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And very powerful again.
Yes.
And you've been saying that for a few years, that poem. And it is powerful. Have you felt heard in sharing that with a white audience in the past? Do you feel like things are changing? What is your
Have I felt heard? That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't know if a poet ever feels quite heard.
Yeah.
So, what they're talking about comes to fruition or does not, or prevents something from coming to fruition. Our white brothers and sisters that have experienced that poem, I have seen them impacted by it. And I've seen and witnessed folks move because of it, take chances because of it, meaning speaking to their other white colleagues and friends and associates about race, about Blackness. I've seen folks move in that direction. So heard, I don't know if that's quite the word, but definitely it is inspired. And in some cases, instigated movement and conversation on race and on Blackness and love of Blackness. And then at this point in time, I recognize that there are a number of people who have moved further along in their journey when it comes to loving Blackness and recognizing racism, the institution of it. And also recognize that a lot of people, this is their first step, that protest or that rally, that was their first step. And so I appreciate the protest and I appreciate the people that are engaging and the white folks that are getting into that and all facets of humanity around the globe that are joining in this movement to just see people as human beings, to see Black folks. And when I say Black, I'm talking about anyone connected to the diaspora of Blackness, because I mean, we can have a whole nother hour conversation about how the world tries to assign you an identity based on how you appear to them. But the world is absorbing this energy and moving on it. The plan needs to be for it to be sustainable, for it not to be just a moment. Nobody wants just a moment with this. We need it forever. And this is a point where we can shape and shift the future of history so that we're in a much better place. And we fall short and fail if we make it just a moment and not forever. And I believe we can make it forever.
Thank you for saying that. And I see that dream. I've seen that in following you for a few years, and inclusion of everybody talking about the home of the world of us and talking about global solidarity, getting to that point, which is going to require a lot of work. But I see how you get people not only to hear and feel the stories of your poems, but also to feel the concept of inclusion and consider exclusion, and that feels visceral for them. And also then that we can be different. And you joke about Hillary or Trump supporters, I've heard in the past, are patriots and jets and things, but yeah, you have a magic about you in getting people to have experiential opportunities, such as selfies and talking with strangers.
We don't spend enough time acknowledging how we can be together.
Yeah.
We spend enough time talking about how we're separate, and we have all kinds of forces trying to divide us. I like to remind us how we all the time have opportunity to be together. And the young people, they do it so wonderfully.
Yeah.
And I want to nurture that and continue to inspire it and have them take us forward.
And you are inspiring them, I know, in a variety of settings. And there's a lot that we could talk about, but I noticed from your bio, you're inspiring young people in college and high schools and different settings. And we have about 7 minutes, and I don't know if there's anything else you want to say or share one more poem at least.
I can do that. Okay.
We'll see what we can do in 7 minutes.
We'll do one more. We'll keep it right on time. Forever. We acknowledge the indigenous family that came before us, Black ancestors, exhaustion and racial battle fatigue. We acknowledge white silence, recognize the silencing, acknowledge the absence, acknowledge the strength and genius that is the Black woman, as the son of a single Black woman that raised this Black man, a byproduct of Harlem, New York City, where COVID-19, as you know, took my grandmother. I am a Black man and call into this space the recognition of Black men. Recognize all Black people, gender, sexuality, and life. We acknowledge Black love, acknowledge the academic family, the human family, imperfection, this city, acknowledge the history of injustice against Black people by the justice system, police, in the world, and here, where you are, there. We recognize the murders, racial terrorism, and death of Black people. We recognize the history of Black voice being ignored. We recognize the double standard, Black tears and the we run out of tears. We recognize the relationship between privilege and oppression. We acknowledge the discomfort, fear, pain, trauma, suffering, survival, and resilience. I believe people know right from wrong. What we saw last week was wrong. To have federal forces weaponized against peaceful protesters is wrong.
Yeah, thank you.
Weaponizing those forces, eerily similar to Amy Cooper weaponizing her identity and privilege against Christian Cooper. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Sean Reed, Ahmaud Arbery, and the countless others before and after them that did and did not receive attention from the media and national news outlets. We acknowledge them. We say Black Lives Matter in this space so that it is heard. We know that 6 of the last 8 weeks, we've experienced racism, racial terrorism, and it has impacted us. We know how this pandemic disproportionately affects Black people, brown people, minoritized people. We know that on the nightly news, I can see someone that looks like me die on repeat right after the words, "This is going to be hard to watch," and then proceed to show it and know that they will edit out curse words and things that seem like they may be more important than my Black life. How often does a conversation about this come up around our kitchen tables, our dinner, in our classrooms, in our meetings, in our settings? Not enough. We have a responsibility to undo injustice. It's our responsibility. So I want to just leave us with this. We need us. We need us right now, all in, together. You are included, your love is included, and your light is included. Let's move together. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, powerful. And I know you have a TED Talk. It's called Blueprint for Community. People can look up. Are there other ways that people can find out more about you?
People can definitely go to YouTube and check out some videos. The freedom teams that are around Massachusetts are another way to not be. It's never about me. It's about us. The energy that you feel is us connecting with each other. Whenever I speak, it's not me, it's us. If I ever let it be about me, I'm lost. It's about us. It's so much about our energy. We are so connected when we allow it to be. And so what I try to do is just find the connections with people. And that's what it's about, Cheryl. So you can do the YouTube thing. You can email me at Harlem125 I kept an AOL account at AOL.com. But Harlem is spelled with the YHARLYM 125 at AOL.com. You can, I don't know. I mean, I'm open to having all kinds of conversations and connecting with folks. So please utilize that email. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. You can look that up through Jamil Adams, and those things will come up. And if you see me and want to have a conversation about something, whether you agree with me or not, I want to engage in that conversation, because if we can have a conversation, that means we can probably have a relationship of some sort that is appropriate, and at the best, it'll be appreciated. So I'm always open to having that conversation.
Conversations are important, so important now. Thank you so much. And I know
Doing this, you've been doing this for a while, Cheryl. You've been humble.
well, I haven't been doing the Zoom thing. This is new for me. Zoom conversations are new for me. So
You're
I,
great. You're great. You're gracious and very patient. I appreciate your patience and your greatness.
well, I appreciate your patience and greatness too, and your word, your voice, and what you are doing for our world going forward, which I am praying for.
Yeah.
We need to work for and talk about, and I'm working on that too in learning at this time. So I thank you. I thank you for being here,
Thank you.
and look forward to hearing you out in the world also again.
So the last thing I leave with folks is we should know that today the mayor actually made it known that racism is considered a problem in Massachusetts and Boston, and so that he's going to take 20% of overtime pay from officers and put it towards social programs. So baby steps in good direction. As we reimagine what policing is like. I know we're out of time. Sorry about that, but I wanted to throw it in there. Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, we just made it, and that's great, important news. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Take care.
All right.
125. Thank you. Bye. Now we are moving on to Jihan Padma, who is here from California. So I think it's about 4 o'clock. Hello, Jihan.
Hello, glad to see you.
Glad to see you too. And thank you for joining for the program this evening. I'll just tell the folks a few things about you before we move on. And that is that you are teaching over at the California Institute for Human Science, and you have been teaching in Department of Comparative Religion program there, and teaching Zen practice for over 25 years in different settings all over, including Wellesley College, which is where I first met you. And Jihan has her first book, Living the Season Zen Practices for Transformative Times. And there's a second book on the way, Field of Blessings of Traditional Buddhist Healing Practices. And I know I wanted to talk about your article recently in the Authority magazine as it relates to your book, Living the Season, Zen Practices for Transformative Times, which is a great book. But I know we knew each other. You came to Hopkinton sometimes on some of my programs to read from your writing. And I went to Wellesley College to your programs. And in addition to your religious studies department programs and meditation teaching, you had offered the wonderful program of Art and Soul for community, where there were people like Mary Oliver, artists, and Issei Barnwell and Thich Nhat Hanh and all kinds of wonderful experiences you made happen. I just very quickly, because this is a program about art and sharing art with community, in retrospect, how do you feel that what that offered for a community? Why is that important to remember at this time?
Because as our brother Harlem 125 was expressing, a community is powerful. And those arts programs in particular were designed to lift up voices that haven't always been lifted up. That we need to hear the stories of each other in order to build a more sustainable community.
Yeah.
You know, at this time, that social compact that unites us is all frayed because of these patterns of racism and bias and oppression. And we need to shift to more regenerative social systems that sustain us individually and collectively. And that direction was expressed through those artists very powerfully. You know, there's one that I was just thinking of today, actually, who's in the Boston area, the great spoken word artist and musician Ayoka, who said, let that be my daily testament, that any person I meet at any point can play a role in my life that can change the dynamics of everything.
Mm.
And so if we take that perspective, then everyone is a precious member of our ecosystem. Everyone is part of our circle. Nothing is left out.
That's a beautiful impromptu answer. Thank you for addressing that. And I know you're busy now. You're finishing your work there at the university. You offer different meditation groups and Sangha. There's one coming this evening that folks might be interested in. And you have also been involved in community a great deal since I've known you. And over in California, you've been involved in immigration justice from 4 years ago and addressed the concept of radical compassion within your the Zen practice there. And also you have been very involved in restorative healing.
Restorative justice circles, yes.
That's right. And more recently, your Zen Sangha that's taking place here. There's a lot going on that you have helped to facilitate for community. And I don't know, let's see, if you want to address any of that before talking about Zen practices for transformative times, which is what we are in now.
Yeah, well, since you brought up the restorative justice circles, and since I also did some writing about that, maybe it's a good segue from Harlem 125's poetry. So in the past, it's not that these things didn't happen that were horrible incidences of violence and bias, as well as this kind of structural violence that is harder to see. But structural violence is that way that racism can be embedded in some social institutions, so we don't actually notice it. It's not on the surface. It's things that are built into economic systems or the way that schools are funded, and that actually perpetuates these cycles of inequity. So there's many ways in which bias and racism have been invisible, and the work has been to make the invisible visible. But then there's also social media, which means that we have a wake-up call through that, our knowledge of the racial bias and racial harm. And yet, as spiritual people, we have this vision. So one person who has held that vision for me is civil rights theologian Howard Thurman. He was one of the advisors to Martin Luther King. So here's a short piece from him. He says, all around us, life is dying and life is being born. The fruit ripens on the tree. The roots are silently at work in the darkness of the earth against a time when there shall be new leaves, fresh blossoms, green fruit. Such is the growing edge. This is the basis of hope in moments of despair. The incentive to carry on when times are out of joint and dreams whiten into ash and men have lost their reason. The birth of the child, life's most dramatic answer to death, this is the growing edge incarnate. Look well to the growing edge. So then what is that growing edge? It's the growing edge in some way is having these conversations about what's been up, those challenging conversations that we have to lean into, that take us out of our comfort zone. But through those conversations, we can create this world of equity in which our relationships operate with a flow of reciprocity, and they move us from that individual that is by definition isolated, anxious, alone, lonely, oriented towards avoiding threat, to identification with the we, moving from the I to the we. And that was also a theme in the poetry we've just heard. So we then becomes a source of continuous renewal. And then through this exploration, we are investing in social capital. We're helping rebuild living systems. We're creating that community we're all hungry for, that operates at levels of depth and understanding and connectivity, where each person shares their gifts and talents, and in doing that supports the unfolding of other people's gifts. And then out of this, the collective benefits and people's needs are met, including the needs of the earth and all the people that inhabit it. Because within this world, the value is centered upon what is the greatest benefit for the whole. This is based in nature. In nature, if we see a forest, it's constantly changing, creating itself. It doesn't exist in a state of perfection. And in that way, our institutions, our communities, our governments are a reflection of us, and they are reflected within us. We're in this together, and the way that our institutions evolve is up to us. The work that each of us does, we can't sit it out. The work that each of us does to shift the story of separation to a story of interbeing has global implications. And it really involves being able to do our shadow work, cultivate this radical self-acceptance through which we include these parts of ourselves that are difficult to be with. And then that brings us the capacity to move out of just tolerating the other into active engagement, working creatively with the conflicts and the tensions that are going on. And that's the place where the new life is birthed. Mm-hmm. That's the place that I'm interested in as a Zen teacher and a spiritual counselor, because it's actually the most precious work for us individually. As Carl Jung said, we don't achieve enlightenment by imaging figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, which is working with our shadow, mm-hmm. and asking ourselves those challenging questions.
Yeah.
One of the prayers I was recommending to my community recently was, please, universe, creator, however we envision that divine, please show me my blind spots. Help me with my growing edge. Help me grow gracefully. And then really being able to explore our inner experience with integrity and accountability. One of the things I've told my students is that we're not responsible for our ancestors, but we are accountable. And with that accountability, that means, what am I doing right now? And how can I create better reciprocity within this situation? What can I bring to the table? So that's the path of practice, and it actually fits very seamlessly with my book, Living the Season.
Yes, and we just have a few more minutes. There's so much else I wanted to talk about, so maybe there'll be another time for that, but do you have about 3 minutes more of whatever you'd like to say? There's so much.
Well, it's that image for me of the unbroken circle, right? The circle of wholeness. And that represents the full spectrum of our moment-to-moment experience. To be able to be present to joy, we also need to feel and be present to pain. There's a friend of mine named Carl who says we carry the pain of our ancestors. We need to be open to the shared grief of each other, to be open to feel this consciously, to consciously choose, and to do this work. That is what heals. So that in a Buddhist framework is the path of the Bodhisattva, to say that all of this is one breath. And if he can't breathe, then I also can't breathe. And the breath itself flows through us as a circle, and then our community also is an unbroken circle. So that's the image I would like to leave us with, that image of circles.
Yes, the we, also
the we.
Harlem 125 was talking about. and we can learn more from you, because I know the Authority magazine in there with a wonderful interview. They were curious to know what you recommend for tools, for suggestions to help folks in looking at these times. And so Living the Seasons and Practice for Transformative Times is available out on Amazon.
Yes.
And you offer wonderful suggestions, and as you are talking about comes through the focusing on mindfulness practice, no matter what you believe, faith or not, and that in doing that and addressing, as you're talking about, focusing, accepting shadow side, and accepting self, and then going out and looking at other and taking care of one another becomes very important. And I read from that article, this wake-up call had helped me step out of my own way and see the connection and respond. In the end, I felt more alive, more authentic, more myself. So did I help him or did I help myself? This is a story from you. Is there a difference? I thought that was so important, that statement about thinking about one another. And
That's the
in our
direction of all of
interconnection.
this. Thank you for reminding me of that. It's yes, ultimately we are, for our own wholeness, we depend upon the wholeness of others. And, there is the particularity, because we are in this three-dimensional world. And so on that level, race, while on the absolute level could be an illusion, on the relative level, the harm that's been caused by that is real. And so we hold that tension. Ultimately, we're one community. At the same time, there are some of us who are experiencing harm. And so we go there to engage with that and say, how can I see my part in this? And recognizing that my liberation is bound up together with yours, what can we create new and different? And because ultimately, as we do that, that supports the healing of the generations that are past and the generations to come.
We need so much at this time. So thank you. And so I encourage the book, and I have to say goodbye as we have one more guest, and we can stay tuned. And what is a site for you?
Website would be mountainpath.org, mountain like a big mountain, path.org.
All right. So good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Goodbye. And Deborah, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you tonight. And so you are going to be singing us out a little bit. And just for folks to know, Deborah Rocha is here in Massachusetts, now in quarantine. And she's a songwriter, a guitarist, and vocalist. And she performs songs inspired by the decades of the 20s to 50s and Brazilian music. And is married to her husband, Gio, where she became familiar with Brazilian music and sometimes performs with him. And I just am a fan of Deborah's songs, which also address things as very small as particles and microbiomes, and it can be very scientific, but also expansive in thinking about the whole world or being human, making us laugh and cry. So thank you for coming to share a few songs with us tonight. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I really I'm so happy to be with you tonight, Cheryl, and with these wonderful people, Jamel Adams and Ji Hyung. Their messages have touched me deeply.
Well, I know that you have many songs. You are a ponder in your songs, and you also make people feel in your songs. And so I would love for you to share a song now, and we have time for a couple. I'm looking forward to.
All right. Well, we're all in quarantine, correct? And we're all dying to get out of quarantine, I think. It's been very difficult. And one of the things that I think people have been doing to pass the time is cooking. They have rediscovered their cooking skills. So I thought I would play a little song for you. You folks, these vegetables are coming into season now. You might want to try out this recipe. Yellow onion, got to get me some orange pepper, chop, chop. Red tomatoes to put in my stew, my vegetable stew. Green zucchini, got to get me some purple eggplant, chop, chop. Black olives to put in my stew, my rat-a-tat-tooey, rat-a-tat-tooey. There is really no way you can mess up a dish as simple as this. You chop the veggies into chunks and then you slide them into a baking dish. And then you peel some garlic, just a couple of heads of garlic, chop, chop. Black olives to put in my stew, my vegetable stew. Set the oven, got to set it high. To roast that veg, you got to pour on some olive oil to finish that stew. That rat-a-tat-tooey, rat-a-tat-tooey. When you hear the veggies pop and crackle and complain of the heat, you can open up that Beaujolais and it will give you patience until it's time to eat. And then you break up a piece of crusty bread just to soak up the juices. Oh boy, taste the glory of rat-a-tat-tooey, rat-a-tat-tooey. Who can resist? Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tooey. 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 Rat-tat-tat-tat-tooey.
Well, thank you, Deborah. I will always think of ratatouille in a different way now. You make it very appealing. I'll have to get out my cookbook. And I know that you write songs many different ways, make people laugh, make people cry. And you talk in your bio a little bit about being inspired by Brazilian music, which you lived in Brazil for a number of years, and you talk about performing the music, showing people through music what we all have in common, which I think you do through your song lyrics, whether you are, regardless of what language you're singing in or where you're singing. I know that you have made people feel deeply, not only hungry, but also care about the human condition. I know you have 2 CDs, and I wonder if you could perform a song more on the idea of our human condition.
Sure. As we grow, we discover precisely what we are made of. Think we've found some of the answers and know the reasons why. And then love comes along, throws us into uncharted waters, and to sail upon them, we must leave all that we have known behind. And so, when I finally said my goodbyes and fell into the well of your eyes, certain I chart my course there with my maps and my compass, my sextant and square, but no, in your own ocean of love I am lost. At the whim of your tides I am tossed, and my sails are in tatters, my oars all are broken, and none of this matters for you. You are my harbor in the storm, wrapped in your arms I am warm. Life has some meaning and form, and in our love we are reborn. Although we all know this must come to an end. Oh, how lucky we've been to depend on each other. Perhaps such a love even death will transcend. And so when I've said all my final goodbyes, and I've dried all the tears in your eyes, now you know we are mortal, we must pass through that portal. I'll go, and I'll ride on the wings of a dove. It is you I will be thinking of, and to guide me I'll carry your love.
Beautiful, Deborah. Thank you. I know you had both my daughters in their 20s crying when they heard that at a recent symposium. We have 3 more minutes. It's been spinning by. I heard the message of we again in your song, many other topics. Do you want to sing us out, or do you want to say a few words? It's up to you.
Oh, I'd rather sing you out. This is for all the dads out there who have to do this.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Bow by his ears when I play my music. Papa don't know just what he hears when I sing my song. How my papa gotta complain about his ears when I play my music. Papa don't know just what he hears when I play my song. When I play my music, when I play my music, when I play my music, when I play my song. Papa don't know it, but he moves his feet when I play my music. Toe tapping, knee slapping to the beat when I play my song. Oh, my papa don't know it, but he moves his feet when I play my music. Toe tapping, knee slapping to the beat when I play my song. When I play my music, when I play my music, when I play my music, when I play my song. Papa gotta tell me, won't you turn it down now when I play my music? Papa gotta yell it out real loud when I play my song. Oh, my papa gotta tell me, won't you turn it down now when I play my music? Papa gotta yell it out real loud when I play my song. When I play my music, when I play my music, when I play my music, when I play my song. Come on now, Papa, won't you dance with me when I play my music? Papa gonna swing it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, when I play my song. Come on, Papa, won't you dance with me when I play my music. Papa gonna swing it now. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I play my song. 2, 3, 4. When I play my music. When I play my music. When I play my music. When I play my song. When I play my music. When I play my music. When I play my music. When I play my song.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. May we dance and sing and lift each other like you suggest as we go forward in this, building this new world. We're talking about the world of we.
Let's dance together.
Let's all dance together. Any last word from you?
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
HCAM.
much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.